Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Maven Capital Partners podcast, Invested. My name is Laura Boyd, and I'm an entertainment reporter and presenter, and I've interviewed everyone from the likes of Harrison Ford to Susan Boyle to Lewis Capaldi to Lulu, and so many more in between. But this podcast is a little bit different. Here I'm chatting to, I guess, the stars of the business world, the CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders at the helm of some of the UK's fastest growing companies. We hear about the businesses that they run and they work in, but more so we learn about the people behind them, what they were like at school, what their interests are, how they got to where they are today, the highs and lows of their career, and also their top tips for those looking to follow in their footsteps. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Neil Spann. He is the CEO of a company called Carillion. It's a tech company at the cutting edge of innovation in the solar energy space. It's a really, really interesting watch and listen. Neil is fabulous, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So take a look at this. Neil, thank you so much for joining me today on our podcast. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm good. Very much looking forward to hearing from you. So we're going to start this podcast the way we start them all the time, with your morning routine, because what I'm seeing with kind of business leaders and entrepreneurs is that they have a very early start and a very kind of positive start to the day that are no long lives. They seem to get straight into it. So tell me a bit about your start to the day.
Well, it's interesting. It's changed a little bit recently because my youngest daughter has just headed off to university. So the day used to start with potentially a school run twice a week, which used to take me about an hour. So that was a time. Actually, it's a good time in the car, but then it was maybe catching up on a call or just thinking about the day ahead. Actually, now is a little bit of exercise if I can, a little bit of a run, a little bit of morning exercise just to sort of wake the brain up and get a bit of fresh air. And then a little bit of time just planning for the day. I'm trying to, because I think we're all guilty of having a million emails flying about and a lot of things. So actually trying to spend 10, 15 minutes. What are the 3 to 5 things I want to get done today, rather than I'm just going to be a slave to my email box, which has can be a challenge. So, and I might squeeze the odd wordle in if I can, if I can, to keep my streak up.
Exercising the body and the brain. I like it, Neil.
Absolutely,
That's good.
absolutely.
And actually,
Waking up.
I really like that point of making, a kind of a list of the 3 to 5 things or so that you want to achieve that day. Because I am guilty of that, of just, everything kind of running away. You start the day and then it just all kind of piles on. So I think that's a really good way to do it. Um, Take me back to when you were a youngster growing up. What were you like, and what was school like for you?
Wow, okay, that's some time ago in the dim and distance, just in the black and white days. This was of of TV. So I was born in South Shields in the northeast of England. Pretty very working class upbringing. Lived in social housing. Actually, my father worked for the social housing company, so I think we got the house with the job type thing. Went to the local comprehensive, and but had certainly from my mother's side, a real push to do your best you can at school. So I was involved in lots of clubs and Duke of Edinburgh's and things like that, and really, wanted to, do as well as I could. But originally I wanted to be a chef. So I enjoyed cooking and you get sort of sliding doors moments. I think I've had 3 or 4 in my life when we were going to. The first one was, I'm going to be a chef. I'm going to be a chef, right? Great. And work experience was I'd arranged to go to a local hotel. This was from my school, and then the restaurant went bust, and I ended up going to the local school to do school dinners, which sort of put me off cookery. It's fair
No
to
wonder.
say. So that was my sort of right. Maybe the life of the chef is not really what I wanted to do. So but I was sporty, played football, did running. So I was just really had a good circle of friends. Just that kind of really nice upbringing, with most of the kids locally went to the local school, so it was really one of those pieces. And then ended up getting some decent GCSEs. It went on to the local college to do my A levels, and very much I was a bit of a maths bod. Maths is my thing rather than necessarily the written or spoken word. But so ended up um, doing well, and then went off to Liverpool University to study maths, and was first person from the family from that perspective. So yeah, it's really you sort of looking back on it, maybe a challenging times, and money wasn't there was a lot of money. I mean, I didn't go abroad till I was 19, I don't think. So it's different, I think expectations these days are a little different, but it was great. I wouldn't change it. I think there's a few things happened which just drove a little bit of discipline and a little bit of wanting to be the best at whatever I'm trying to do, and wanting to succeed came through.
And were your parents super proud then when you went to university? Was that a big thing?
It was absolutely, absolutely. I mean, get not getting too personal in these things, but my mother had a life limiting condition, which meant basically she didn't quite get to see me go, which is it's a bit of a shame, really. But yes, I'm sure there was a bit of proudness there. Would have clearly been a lot of proudness there, and it was great. And I mean, this is back in the day when you didn't have student loans. You got a grant. I got a grant. I'm so lucky that I got a grant to go to university, and took a small student loan just as it was coming out. So it was a very different system back then, and but thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was the first step into the real wide world, not being in the local northeast.
What were those times in Liverpool like?
Great. I mean, I think Liverpool's a brilliant city. I mean, it's a bit
Yeah.
like Newcastle. It's very similar culture, quite a sort of energetic culture, predominantly working class, and work hard, play hard. I think it's a great city. Really enjoyed it. I mean, since then, it's really developed out massively. I mean, I still go back. I've got friends there. But back then, I think this is in the days where morning TV was just starting, and Richard and Judy on the Albert Dock. I don't know if you remember, that might be
Oh
before your
yeah, I
time.
remember. And the map.
So, well, Fred the Weatherman, yeah, all that kind of good stuff. So very, really, really great time. Met some great people. Still got some good friends from uni, and it was an eye opener of, there's a bit more to the world outside of just the northeast of England type thing. So it was great. It's a great city, and love going back there.
It is. It's a great place, great party place.
Yes,
Did you
yes.
know when you went to university, did you have an idea? Obviously, you were doing maths, but did you have an idea of where you wanted to go afterwards, or were you very much kind of living in that moment of getting the degree? Because I kind of felt when I went, I knew I wanted to work in television or wanted to work in kind of media, but I had no idea really about the intricacies of the jobs or which area I would kind of go into.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't have a fixed view. It's fair to say. I mean, we started to get a little bit interested in business, during that kind of period, and what businesses do, and hadn't really considered that too much. And as you went through the master degree, what do you do with a master degree is the question. Do you go into actuarial? Do you go into be a teacher? Do you do something different? And actually, ended up going to a few of the milk rounds that used to, I think it might be still called the milk rounds, and the world of accountancy was my first calling. So, and looked pretty interesting. You get to see lots of different businesses, work on different things. So ended up applying to some of the big five, as it was back in the day. There was five big accountancy firms in the globe. Had an interview at two, three, or four of them, and ended up getting a couple of offers and joined a company called Arthur Anderson, which was one of the big American accountancy firms at the time, and quite American, it has to be said, in its culture. Quite American,
Was that a
which
good
was
thing or?
interesting and very, very quite brash, quite we're the
Yeah.
best, we're the best, we hire the best. There was a lot of that going on, which I remember the first conference we ever went to was this graduate intakes. When the whole of EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Asia got together in Eindhoven. So it was like 3 or 4 thousand people there. It was a huge gathering. And the
Mm.
guy walks on to Simply the Best by Tina Turner. I thought that was an interesting, an interesting. It's like, right, okay, here we are. But you really are. There are some extremely bright people there. Great different cultures. I got to travel around the world. Worked in the US. Worked in Europe. Got to see lots of different businesses. Worked on everything from car dealerships, like through to football clubs, through to manufacturing companies, just a real gambit of companies during that period. So it was, and very much the culture within that organization was very quite sort of what I would say, very old-fashioned American, which was the top 10% of the company of staff really did very well.
Yeah.
The bottom 10% were usually exited, and the middle 80% not sure really what happened. So it was a an interesting culture. I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that culture, but that was the culture that was there. So, but a great grounding. It was great. I mean, you get to you know, as a graduate, you talk to CFOs and CEOs of businesses that are worth billions. There's not
Yeah.
many jobs where you actually get that opportunity. So I always say to people that, you know, getting your accountancy degree, your qualification, sorry, chartered accountancy, it's a great grounding. It really is. And
Yeah.
from that perspective,
And what would you say was the best lesson you learned through that, or the best thing that you took from that role?
a couple of things. I think listening probably. I think yeah, certainly. I think listening to the points that people were making and trying to understand them rather than giving people the answer before you've had a chance. So I think a little bit of reflective thinking and listening, I think was key. And the second thing was just how to work with different people of different cultures, different backgrounds, um, and really different perspectives on life. You know, because
Yeah.
I think that is, um, you know, certainly growing up in the Northeast, you were there wasn't as much diversity as there was in this role. So very much it was really learning how different people thought and acted, and how you try and get the best out of people. So mainly on the people side, yes, you learn loads of technical stuff, but that's 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 great. But it's
Yeah.
really about the culture and how to develop and learn.
And when there is that, you kind of talk about that, wanting almost to be in that top 10%, and there is that kind of pressure and drive, and we see that
Yes.
across all businesses. How good do you think you are, Neil, at kind of managing that, and now as well? Are you good at switching off, and how do you do that?
That's a good question. Um, I think I think because of the culture of those type of organizations, if you do reasonably well, you tend to be able to cope with. And I've always been pretty good at coping with stress and pressure, exams or situations. I don't know why. Maybe it's some of the issues, and maybe I was hardened as a kid, or some of the things that happened to me. I don't know, but I can deal with stress reasonably well. I think switching off. I'm quite lucky that I can sort of turn my brain off. I don't often have sleepless nights about work per se, because I've there's something I can turn my brain off a little bit, you know, during the evening. So, um, sort of okay. And I think,
Yeah.
but actually, what I have learned as I've sort of gone into different roles, and we'll talk about the journey from there to where we are now, I'm sure, but um, that take a step back sometimes, because the pressure is like, yes, 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 just take half a step back and sometimes look at the bigger picture. It gives you a different perspective. And I think that helps me a little bit, because it's once you're in the really in a problem, in the mud and bullets, it's hard to like, if you stand back half a step. So, you know, no one's perfect, but I'm not the kind of person that carries a lot of stress around with me per se. A lot of
Yeah.
there are pressures to deliver, and it's, you know, especially when you're running a company and you've got people working in the business, you've got to raise funding, you've got to do lots of things. Pressures can evolve, but actually, I always try and take a step back and actually, you know, and try and make sure you get a work-life balance and spend time with the family and do a bit of fitness stuff, or, you know, play golf or whatever your hobbies are. You've got to have that balance. And I think in my early years, I was guilty. I could work from 7 o'clock till midnight. That was a usual day. But you've got to learn that it's not a model that can work. That
Yeah,
not
you can't sustain that at
no
all. And to do
not at all.
better, you need to take the time for yourself as
Yes,
well. Well,
yes,
let's talk about how you got to where you are
yeah,
today. So CEO of Power Role, how did that come about?
yeah. It's been an interesting journey. So I think there's been two pivotal moments in sort of my career that has sort of made the change. So the first was So Anderson, the Arthur Anderson, the company I was working with, in the US, they had an issue, very famous issue about Enron, the energy company, and basically the Andersons stopped trading, and we moved across to different accountancy firms. I ended up at EY in the UK, so another one of the big four. And am I going to go through and go through down the partnership route, or should I go into industry? And through a sort of fortuitous, these moments are slight fortuitous, we were introduced to a company in the Northeast called Eaga, EAGA, and they were working in the field of energy efficiency and renewables. So and they were looking at an IPO, and I had the chance to go, and because we were pitching for the work, but we didn't get the work because someone else already had it. But actually, I went out there and worked with them during the IPO, which was brilliant. Got to meet a brilliant team, um, led by a group of directors that had grown a business from two people to at this point about 4,000 staff and revenues of about 500 million. So this was delivering fuel poverty programs for the government. So putting in boilers, insulation, heating, solar PV, and heat pumps, all those type of measures, running private contracts. It was a really great Northeast business. Worked with them during the IPO, and that was eventually listed in 2006 onto the FTSE 250. So it was a really, really, quite successful business, or very successful business, and loved it. Loved being part of the team. And there was two things that I loved. I mean, great being part of the team, more diverse team. Wasn't just a bunch of accountants, because typically in accountancy firms, you're a bunch of accountants. So you could probably throw a net over, general sort of type of person there. Here we were, really 5,000 different staff. So joined the company. So that was the first major sort of switch and move to, and really got excited by working with a company with a lot of energy, but also it was making a difference. And that was the really important thing. So we went into 2 million houses and made a difference to people's lives by making them warm, and could reduce their heating costs and their fuel bills. So basically, we used to go and visit houses that we'd been in, and Mrs. Miggins of 64 Acacia Avenue, and go in there and say, I don't have to wear two jumpers now. That's a nice, it's, and really that really did stimulate a thought of, you can do good in the world, and you can obviously, make money for your shareholders. The two aren't incompatible. So that was the first side of it. So worked at E again, working different finance and commercial roles across the piece, and ended up being the director of investor relations. So dealing with the city and dealing with those type of things. The business eventually got sold. So in 2011, the business was sold, and I stayed on with the acquired business for a wee while. And then the second sliding door moment happened. And so by the time we'd floated and sold the business, the guy who was the CEO of Eaga was a guy called Drew Johnson. And Drew is, a real mentor, and, was instrumental in growing that business. He was one of the first two guys. It's interesting, a slight aside, the first two guys that worked in the coal sector, they worked for the coal board. So putting carbon in the atmosphere. So for the next 30 years, Drew has really worked to take carbon out of the atmosphere. It's really, really, it is a coincidence, but the site I'm sitting on here today in County Durham used to be an old coking works. And actually, Drew started his career on this site. I mean, that's it's a complete crazy.
Full circle.
It's crazy. So Drew had, when we sold the business, Drew left because he was the CEO and the business had been acquired. And Drew started to look at interesting businesses to invest in, and was introduced to a scientist based out of the Northeast. So we're based near Seaham in County Durham, so it's just near the coast. Mining community, ex-mining community. So a guy called Dr. John Topping, who was a physicist, was at Oxford University at this point, but from the Northeast, and was an expert in packaging and vacuum coating technology, and had worked in MOD and other things. Really, really very, very clever scientist, and basically approached Drew through a contact about this way, can we make solar panels better and cheaper and lighter and faster? And Drew asked myself and two other people to have a look at this, and we got excited because just before we'd sold the previous business, we were one of the largest installers of solar panels. So we knew all the problems, how heavy they were, how rigid they were, Basically at this point we were buying from Germany. Now we buy them all from China, but that's a different story for
Yeah.
a different day, maybe. And we said, if this is true that we can make solar panels like crisp packets effectively, this could be a game changer. So
Yeah.
the basically we invested behind this scientist John. So at this point there was John and a patent. It's what was existing. And basically I joined as part of that and joined as CEO. So it was a complete leap into the unknown from previous experiences of big businesses with a lot of infrastructure and a lot of support, and the numbers are in the hundreds of millions
Yeah.
into, so you want a desk, right? You're gonna have to buy a desk. You're gonna have to make the desk. We didn't even have an office. So some interesting conversations with my wife about
I was going to say, yeah, how did that go?
um, I think she did challenge me a little bit, going from what is a relatively secure position and a lot of stability. There was quite a lot, quite a bit of travel, but a lot of stability to something that, you know, was much less stable. But really, I think she got on board because she could see how excited we were about it, and it come back to that key wanting to make a difference, that we believe that what we're doing here at Powerwall can make a massive difference into the world in terms of
Yeah.
saving carbon, generating clean energy on virtually any surface, and obviously the ability to create value for our shareholders, and also for the UK. As I said earlier, 99% of panels now are all made in China,
Yeah.
solar panels, and we've got the potential to make it here in the UK, which is what we're doing, but also then to bring our technologies and manufacture globally, in places around the world. So it was and really never look back, and that was a great transition, and we've grown the business significantly, we've grown the team where we are, but it was a leap of faith. It's fair to say,
Yeah.
but sometimes you've got to do that. And you often think, well, if I hadn't done that, what would have happened? Or if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't had that meeting with Eaga, if Drew hadn't been introduced to John, you stand back and think, but that's the sliding doors moments, as I call it.
Yeah.
But it's been great.
How important is it, do you think, to everyone to trust their gut? Because that's obviously what you did. And I feel that in so many of these podcasts where we speak to people, many are in that same situation, kind of, fairly secure job. And it is literally that, it's just that leap of faith, isn't it? And feeling something inside you going, yeah, this is right. I've got to go for it.
Yes, I think you have to. I mean, I'm a reasonably analytical person given my background,
Yeah.
but you can analyze everything, but sometimes you've got to trust your gut. And this was too good an opportunity for us to really do something, and actually from a personal perspective to create something, to create
Yeah.
something from what was an acorn, an acorn of an idea which, a really brilliant scientist had come up with, to where we are now. We're definitely a growing tree, but still quite a small one. So I think the you could just see that it could happen.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think you've got to go with your gut sometimes, and in many things, and sometimes they'll be wrong. That you have to accept that I've made plenty of wrong decisions in Parallel and in other places, but actually most of the time I think you will broadly make the right decision if you follow your instincts, from that perspective.
As you say, there have been highs and lows. How do you deal with the lows or the disappointments, or when things don't go wrong? How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think a little bit what I said earlier, the ability to step back and, because I am my modus operandi is I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist in life, in my private life, and in any sport. You always an optimist that today is going to be a good day type thing, and I think I tend to stand back and, where there's been a problem or a delay on something, or there's been a people issue or something's not worked out, I take them quite personally because for me, Parallel it's personal to me. But
Yeah.
actually stand back and still look at the bigger picture. Are we still heading towards the journey that we want to make? Yes, there's
Mhm.
maybe a deviation, but it's the stand back piece. And what can I learn from it with anything?
Yeah.
Because I'm a firm believer in is I cannot fix yesterday, but I can use yesterday to try and do better tomorrow. That's just one of the, it's just, I just, You get a lot of people who love a bit of hindsight. Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, if only we'd done this. And yes, hindsight. Can we turn that into foresight? So I try to take the positives out of it. I really, really do. And I think, and learn from it, because life's the learning. I mean, I've learned so much at these sort of different phases of my career, where I've learned so much coming into as a new CEO, really. Well, I was a new
Yeah.
CEO, learned so much. And I'm sure if I turned the clock back and had the skills I had today doing it then, it would be different. But
Yeah.
you can't. You can't. So I very much focus on taking the positives as best I can, and learning.
Which is a great way to live your life. And you said you're an optimist. How do you think your friends and family would describe you?
Um, Definitely an optimist. Um, a little bit, a little bit on the sort of uh not manic side, but a little bit on the trying to do a million things at once. So
Yeah.
start this, start that, start. There's a little bit of that goes on. And I think, but just it's sort of down to earth guy. That's there's really no airs and graces with me in terms of where So I think that's what they say, but you might have to ask them. But I do like a little bit of planning. So even though I'm a bit manic, I do like a bit of planning. So if we go on holiday, I do tend to have a little spreadsheet of what we're planning to do each day for some of the days. So there's a little bit of my logical past uh does does creep in. So I'm probably, yeah, it's interesting. I do a lot of things, but I'm quite planned. So I'm not necessarily a person who would just pack up a suitcase, get on a plane and work out what does at the other end.
Yeah.
I do like to have a bit of a broad plan from that perspective. So I am known as a bit of a planner, and maybe a slight control freak every now and again. That's what my kids say.
And there's method in your madness. That's what I'm getting.
Yes,
There's always a
yes.
method behind it, and passion as well, because you seem so passionate about Power Role and kind
Mhm.
of what you've done. Um, Finally, what is the best bit of advice you've ever been given, and what would be the one bit of advice you would give to anyone in business who's looking to get ahead?
It's a great question. I think, I mean, there's so many, and like Drew, who's been a great mentor to me over the past, because Drew is now our chairman of Parallel. So I've worked with Drew for a long time. I think I'm going to distill it down to the team. Build the right team, trust them to deliver, and facilitate their growth. And I appreciated that to a degree. I think in this role, I really appreciated it more that you can't do everything yourself, and so really building that right team. And that would be my advice: is the team. And it's the old adage. It is a bit of a cliche, but it's recruit people who are better than you. And I've certainly done that at Powerroll, because that's going to make your business more successful. If you're the
Yeah,
best person in the business, I'm not sure that's going to be the best place for a business. So, and then trusting them to deliver. And I think, going back to the control freak, I have got a bit of that for me is something I try to do, which is to try and let the team deliver. And I'm still on that journey of learning that. It's a learning for me to let the team deliver. So, and there'll be mistakes, and then you've got to accept the mistakes as well as the successes. So I think that would be the major piece, the people, because any business is built on its people. Yes, we've got an amazing technology in Parallel. Like no one else in the world's got it. It's patented in 140 countries. It's game changing, but the technology means nothing unless you've got the people to deliver it. So that
yeah.
would be my one. I mean, there's others, but that would be the one if I was to boil it down in terms of advice.
Well, you've given us lots through the whole podcast. It's been an absolute joy to chat to you, and may Power Roll continue to roll on and get ever more
Abs-
successful. Neil, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us on the podcast today. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Thanks,
lovely to
Neil.
meet you.
Well, thank you so much to Neil. And if that's left you feeling inspired or wanting more, then don't forget to like or subscribe to this podcast. You can also find out more information at mavencp.com. I'll see you next time.